People who don't have the Democratic Party at heart. We are Democrats, and we need to stand up for the principles of being a Democrat and for supporting the District of Columbia. A lot of things people say and do here would not be tolerated in New York City, Chicago, or LA, or New Orleans. They will let you get away with some of that stuff. And we should let them get away with it here. You know, we can't let people just walk up in here 5 years and claim they know what's right for the District of Columbia. Okay? But I don't want to take away his thunder, because I know he's going to come with fire and brimstone. But I do want to bring to you, and Carrie, I know you want to be up here with me. Someone who is a fighter for DC. He is a fruit of Washington. Okay, he is one of our own, and someone we need to stand with, as he stands for. I went to jail and got an arrest record because of him. Okay, because of him. But I did it because his principle matched mine. His principle on the issue of DC statehood and autonomy matched mine. And I shared his outrage. And I was willing to go there because he said that he would do that if he turned around and saw us behind him. And I was behind him. Ladies and gentlemen, Ward 5 Democrats, the mayor of the District of Columbia, the Honorable Vincent. Here tonight also.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I am delighted to be here. I want to thank Mr. Branham, Chairman Branham, for such a nice introduction. I want to first of all congratulate him on becoming the chair, becoming the head of the Democratic Party here in Ward 5. Frankly, there's very few people who are more focused and more candid than Robert Branham here in the District of Columbia. So would you join me in saying congratulations to him for his election? And to the other officers who are up here, I think I know everybody pretty much sitting up here, and I've worked with folks who are up here. And frankly, I pretty much know everybody sitting out there also. So it really feels good to be here tonight, and to be here also with two dear friends who are council members. First of all, the gentleman who represents Ward 5 now, and I see his mom here tonight also. We were together at the game on Thursday, and of course he's now in his second term representing Ward 5, and that is Harry Thomas Jr. And the gentleman who used to represent Ward 5 and is now, of course, an at-large member of the council, and who I work with on a very, very frequent basis. In fact, he and I have been working together to try to bring more of the film industry here to the District of Columbia. We went out to California together to see, to talk to some of the execs in the film industry out there, and we're already starting to see some of the fruit of that labor. I've been on the sets, as he has as well, of several different shows that are now being filmed here in the city. Covert Affairs, and 3 or 4 others. I was at one recently where there's a feature film that's being filmed here in the District of Columbia, and he's already had a hearing on, and we're going to work together to get a bigger presence of the entertainment industry here in the District of Columbia. That, of course, is at-large member, former Ward 5 council member, Vincent. I'm glad Mr. Branham talked about self-determination because, frankly, we have got to continue to wage the fight, right, Anita, as a person who heads our Democratic Party here in the District of Columbia. We have to be eternally vigilant, and we have to watch out for those deals that may not be the best deals for us. We had one of those recently, and frankly, I want to start out by saying that Democrats ought to learn something, that those who are in our party are not necessarily always our friends, and those who are in the other party are not necessarily our enemy. Because we had a gentleman who was a Republican who carried the water for the District of Columbia in ways that frankly nobody else was carrying it. I remember the days, and I'm sure you do too, and they weren't so long ago, when we had a Democratic president, when we had a Democratic House, and we had a Democratic Senate. And what the heck do we have to show for having a Democratic, uniformly Democratic leadership up and down the line? And the answer is nothing. Zero. And frankly, I think we need, I know we're Democrats, but we're also citizens of the District of Columbia. And we need to figure out how we carry our message to those who may not carry the party that we are, but may be sympathetic to our cause. Frankly, Darrell Issa is a Republican. He's a Republican leader, but he did more to carry our message in the recent past than anybody I know of. You know somebody that carried it better other than Eleanor Holmes Norton, of course, who was our own. But tell me about somebody who carried that message better than Darrell Issa. Now, we were at the threshold of achieving budget autonomy, meaning that we would have had the ability to make decisions about how we spend our own money. And at the end of the day, we came together, the Congresswoman, the chairman, and I, and said, no, we aren't going to accept this deal. And the reason why I didn't accept it is because Mr. Branham talked about us going to jail last spring. Anybody remember what the issue was? It was women's rights to choose. And the fact that we in the District of Columbia should have been able to make our own decisions about our own money. And that's what was being put in front of us once again. And that is, guys, you can have budget autonomy, but you're going to have to accept a permanent provision in the charter of the District of Columbia that would forbid you from spending your own money on abortions for needy women. I don't think that's about a woman's right to choose. I don't think it's about pro-life or pro-choice. It's about the District of Columbia being able to do what everybody else in this nation does, choose to spend our money the way we want to spend our own money. So, yeah, I wanted budget autonomy, but why should we have to pay a price that nobody else in the nation pays? Let them go over in Maryland and say, Maryland, we want you to send your budget up to Capitol Hill to be approved. And by the way, in the course of doing that, we'll let you make some decisions about it if, in fact, you will accept this provision about guns, or those provisions about abortions, or these provisions about medical marijuana, and so on and so forth. No way. They will be laughed right out of there. Some of these states and cities, let them go to Chicago and try that. Chicago probably would have abolished the Congress if they had tried something like that. So, at the end of the day, I appreciated the fact that the ball was carried further down the field than it had been carried before. And we were absolutely very close to being able to achieve budget autonomy for the city. But it wasn't worth the price we had to pay. But why can't we use this as a catalyst, Democrats, to be able to continue to wage the battle? In the wake of what happened, has anybody in this room done anything to express our outrage of having to have this imposed upon us, our outrage at getting this close, our outrage at still being disenfranchised the way we are in the District of Columbia? Sometimes I think we are our own worst enemy because people take us for granted. You know, how many people play basketball in here? Y'all know what a self-check is? Anybody know what a self-check? You know what a self-check is, Drew? Yeah. That means, don't worry about him, he can't shoot. And that's exactly the way people treat us at times. Don't worry about the District of Columbia, they can't shoot. They're not going to do anything. Well, when is enough enough, ladies and gentlemen? When do we get our appetite wet enough to say that we are not going to take it anymore? Frankly, we didn't get there. And most of the people I run into in the District of Columbia said, you know what, I agree with you. We shouldn't have to accept that. But then, what happens in the aftermath? What happens? When do we stand up and say, we are prepared to go to jail as much as we have to? We're prepared to withhold our taxes if necessary. We are prepared to do the things to make the case. It is obvious that the attention of those on the Hill has been gotten. How do we get to the next step? Are the Ward 5 Democrats, the Ward 7 Democrats, the Ward 3 Democrats, the Ward 2 Democrats, Democrats across this city? And yes, on this issue, I would invite the Democrats to join hands with the statehood Green, to join hands with the Republican Party and say, you know what, all 601,000 of us are in this boat together. So why don't we join hands and figure out how we're going to fight this issue and get this through the Congress? Would anybody have given us this much of a chance to get this close? I don't think so. Frankly, I go across the city, and one of the things that worries me is that people seem to be resigned to our plight in the District of Columbia. That folks almost accept it. And you know what? There's no greater defeat than self-defeat. Y'all ever see the experiments that were done on caged animals? You ever see those experiments where they open the door and they won't even come out? Won't even come out. And sometimes I think that's us. That even if the door is open, we don't even come out in order to be able to wage the battle that we know we can ultimately win. And we might not win it tomorrow or day after tomorrow, but we ought to leave it better than what we found it. And frankly, we need to work now to try to bring budget autonomy to this city. What we would have had was a new fiscal year that would have comported more with how we operate in the city. It would have been July 1st to June 30. And we would have had the ability to be able to make decisions about our own budget. Now, one of the reasons why some of us opposed this was we couldn't get agreement from the leadership in the House, and not Mr. Issa, because it wasn't him. We couldn't get agreement from the leadership that we wouldn't have, on this issue around women's right to choose, but also that there wouldn't have been more riders. How do we know how many riders would have been imposed? What would we have been prepared to do? Would we have just accepted it? Had your leadership in the city said, that's fine, we'll take it? And what if they had said, oh, by the way, we're going to stick guns on this too? By the way, we're going to stick medical marijuana on this too. By the way, we're going to come up with every rider imaginable and stick it on it. Now, how bad do y'all want budget autonomy at that stage? We would look like French fried fools. And ain't no fool bigger than a French fried fool, okay? So I guess what I'm saying is I'm imploring us to continue to fight the battle. I'm imploring us as Democrats to stand up and fight for what should be rightfully ours. And so I don't know if you all have even had a discussion here in the aftermath of this. I think 2012, I happen to be a huge Barack Obama supporter. But I also want to know, Mr. President, when you going to stand up for the people of the District of Columbia like 93% of them stand up for the people last election? 93%. That's pretty hefty, isn't it? He has in the budget. How many of y'all know in the federal budget there's language in there for the fiscal year 12 budget which still hasn't been approved? Federal budget hasn't been approved. Language in there that says, give the District of Columbia budget autonomy. It's nice to have that language in there, but have y'all seen any fights going on at the federal level in order to get it done? I haven't heard a peep. I bet you there's not 10 people in this room who even knew it was in the federal budget proposal this year. Folk can write anything in the proposal. It's not that you write it in the proposal, it's whether you raise your hand and vote for it at the end of the day. So, again, I don't want to get on a soapbox in here tonight, but we all are Democrats, right?
That's right.
Are we prepared to fight for what we think is rightfully ours?
Yes.
Man, I don't like somebody putting their hand in my pocket saying, I want to see how much you got in there. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that, Mr. Brown? If I walk up to you and say, I'm going to put my hand in your pocket and see how much money you got.
You come out empty.
Yeah. Well, let's assume you got $20 in there. I pull out your $20 bill and say, I know this is your $20 bill, Mr. Brown. But you better ask me, can you spend it and how you going to spend it? Would you like that?
I think I would be visiting the legal establishment again.
Yeah. I think I'd be throwing the left hook. So, again, I would invite at the next meeting of the Ward 5 Democrats, that there'll be a discussion. I'll be happy to come back and be a part of it as to the next steps we're going to take in this city to achieve what ought to be rightfully ours. How in the world can we live in a city that's supposedly the seat of democracy in the world? And continue to put up with this every day. And then people around the country don't even get it. They don't know. Some of us went, have y'all heard the story about when we went to another state about 3 years ago? We went to another state where they were voting on voting rights. And I think voting rights is fine, but voting rights is just a sliver to me. They were voting on a resolution to support voting rights for the District of Columbia. And there was a legislator, a state legislator, remember this, David and Anita, who said, I didn't even know people lived in the District of Columbia.
Oh my God.
I thought that civil servants and the military came in and worked in the city every day, and they went out to Virginia or Maryland or Delaware or West Virginia or wherever where they lived. That's what we're dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. And you know what? We're sitting aghast. Oh my God, can you believe somebody thinks that? Well, they do. And they will continue to think that as long as we sit here and just fold our arms and say, y'all go right on with it, y'all. It's all right. Change gonna come one day. Well, I'm not Sam Cooke, okay? Y'all remember Sam Cooke? I'm not willing to sit and wait for change to come. And you all typically don't either. Look at the fight you all are waging around education here in Ward 5. Because there are no middle schools in Ward 5. We do a good job of duking it out with each other. But then when they bring in the folk from outside, it's like, it's all right, I don't think I want to be in that one.
That's right.
Yeah.
Don't want to do it. We got a middle school proposal that's now on the table. The chancellor's working on it. You got 3 proposals. Y'all follow that? And that's because of the advocacy right here in this ward. One of them would be a standalone arts and language school for 500 students. Another one would be a STEM school for 100 students, grades 6 through 12. And yet another one would be, I know this will resonate with Carrie, an international baccalaureate school for 300 students. All because of the advocacy right here in Ward 5. It wouldn't have happened unless you all stood up and fought for it. So stand up and fight for yourselves more broadly on other fronts. Join with the other 7 wards in the District of Columbia and say we're not going to take it anymore.
That's right.
And yes, I was glad that, I was glad we had a great game on Thursday. But we had an even better day before that. Earlier that week, we broke ground on a new Dunbar High School. Right here in Ward 5. $120 million. And you know what's going to be the second greatest moment for me to cutting the ribbon on a new school will be when they tear that dump on New Jersey Avenue down. Somebody must have had a nightmare when they built that thing. That is the worst building I've ever seen. Inside and out. The failed open space concept where all it does is facilitate kids wandering around the building. And on the outside it looks like a jail. What a value statement to make about children. To send them to a school that looks like a jail. Well, that's gone, y'all. The groundbreaking is taking place, the construction is underway, and the new Dunbar High School will open for business in August of 2013, precisely 16 months from now. It will be finished and open. I'll mention a couple of other things and then we'll take some questions. You all know that we have a very high unemployment rate here in the city.
Yes, we
And
do.
we're working on it. 11%. One of the highest unemployment rates we've had in a long time. And we're working hard to try to get people back to work. We have this One City, One Hire program. We have already gotten 200 companies signed on. We have literally placed in jobs 500 people at this stage through our new and improved Department of Employment Services. We have 65 people that were placed right here in Ward 5 at Ross Dress for Less over in Heckinger Mall. 7-Eleven has worked with us. And we are working with others to get people back to work here in the District of Columbia. And yes, I'm going to mention it. I'm not going to duck it. Walmart. Walmart. Now, if somebody wants to debate that, we can debate that too. But make sure you got your facts straight, okay? Make sure you got your facts straight. First of all, Walmart will bring 1,800 jobs to the District of Columbia. Walmart will contribute to organizations in the District of Columbia over the next 5 to 7 years, $21 million. $15 million in tax revenue will be generated from the Walmart. And yes, if you go compare their wages today, this is not the Walmart of yesteryear, okay, because we did our homework. The Walmart of yesteryear didn't pay people very well. Their wages are now competitive with Costco and Target, and yes, they offer benefits at this stage as well. They need to do a job of marketing what they have at this stage because they are not the Walmart of yesterday. There will be 2 in Ward 4, there will be 2 in Ward 7, 1 in Ward 6, and 1 right here in Ward 5 at Bladensburg and New York Avenue. And frankly, I think that bringing these opportunities to the District of Columbia will create jobs for people who otherwise might not have a job. And these folks will make somewhere probably between $9 and $11 an hour. I mean, sure, we wish it were more. Of course we do. But I'll tell you one thing. If you're not making anything, it beats a zero. You know what? If you got health care benefits, I've had people say to me that they would rather be on public benefits because when they start calculating the value of Medicaid and TANF and food stamps and whatnot, it actually puts them up around $10 or $11 or $12 an hour based on those benefits. Well, again, Walmart offers health care benefits at this stage, which is one of the greatest benefits that we can have in this nation. So I'm supporting it, and we're going to make it work here in the District of Columbia. There will be one, I guess, on the border of Ward 4 and Ward 5 also in, what's it called, Fort Totten Square now?
Yeah.
Fort Totten Square. I used to work across the street, and it was the first job I had. I think we called it Riggs Plaza back in those days. But there will be 6 in the District of Columbia. And one of the new things that we've established, and then I'll open it up for questions, is I don't know how many of you all have followed our workforce incentive program. We did a pilot on this effort this past summer. And the idea was to give bonuses to companies for hiring district residents. We did it with 5 schools, one of which was Langley. Have y'all been in Langley since it was renovated? And y'all need to go there. It looks great inside there. By the way, I went to Langley 432 years ago. But it looks great inside of Langley at this stage. And as part of a STEM campus, Carrie, it is a pre-K through 8 program at Langley and 9 through 12 at McKinley Tech. So we have a pre-K through 12 STEM program campus right there. But the workforce incentive program is paying bonuses to companies to hire district residents. And frankly, we piloted it this summer with 5 projects because we wanted to see if we could get above the 30 to 35% that typically is the case. There were 53% of the people who were hired were district residents, and 61% of the hours at Langley alone were worked by people who live in the District of Columbia. The program will pay for itself in the tax dollars that will come back to the District of Columbia. So we have made a policy decision. We are expanding it now to all the projects in the District of Columbia because why shouldn't we recycle our own dollars with the people who live in the District of Columbia? Finally, we have a new agency, Department of General Services, in which all construction projects now will be housed. It will bring under one umbrella the schools, DPW, MPD, fire and EMS, and all the agencies that actually do construction projects, because those agencies are not in the business of building buildings, right? When you think of the fire department, do you think of them building a firehouse? When you think of DPR, do you think of them building a recreation center or providing the recreation services? When you think of these agencies, you think about the services that they provide. So we're creating expertise now in the Department of General Services. The agency was launched on October 1st, and will be an agency where expertise will be in maintenance, construction, and renovation. And we invite you to follow it and see how it unfolds. With that having been said, there's a lot more I could talk about, especially around budget, but I'm not going to do that tonight unless you all want to talk about it. And now we'll open up for some questions. Your hand went up first, and I saw Kathy saying after that.
Mr. Mayor, my name is Stan Williams. I live here in Ward 5, and I'm with the U.S. Department of Labor Veterans Employment and Training Service, and we work with Mr. Branham in his office on some projects, and I'm stationed office right over there with the Department of Employment Services. One of the things I've asked in the past, and I'm hoping that your administration they would address, is to identify veterans in some of the, in other agencies other than the Department of Employment Services. We have federal programs that can help take some of the burden off the city. One of them is the tax incentive program for veterans, that employers can be, for a disabled veteran, be reimbursed up to about $10,000. So a lot of the other programs that the city is pouring money into in terms of services, are, veterans are in these programs, but we don't know where they are unless, we can help identify and outreach to them. If some of the other agencies that serve them would identify on their intake veterans, and, we can find out from those agencies, and they can identify them and get them over to the, let the Department of Employment Services know. Second thing is, and this, our councilmen, both of them that are here, Mr. Orange and Mr. Councilman Thomas.
Councilman Thomas over here.
Okay. Yes,
I got your back.
Can you move on?
Legislatively, the District of Columbia usually, in many instances, did mirror federal law as it related to veterans' preference. And they don't anymore. And they got lost somewhere down the line in terms of a lifetime preference. This is another avenue that the District of Columbia can address legislatively and get to you, hopefully that you would sign and give them preference in employment. And I think that too would help that situation. Most of the veterans that live in DC that use city services are the hardcore unemployed. And these are the people that we can help, take a burden off the city.
You may not know this, but you may know this. You seem pretty well informed, obviously. But we have an Office of Veterans Affairs in the district government.
Yeah, we work with Mr. Brandon.
Yeah. Well, the director is Matthew Carey.
Right.
And I know Mr. Brandon knows it because he's a veteran himself.
We worked with him on that job fair at the ARC.
Right.
The mayor's hiring fair for veterans.
Right, yeah.
And we'd be happy to have him come out if you're interested in because he is quite good. I'm very pleased that Matthew agreed to come and work with us because he's been working on veterans issues probably for 25 or 30 years, nationally in many instances. But he's working for us in our office now. And I see you got another, let me come back to you because I want to make sure I get the cast and I get the mark back.
First of all, it's always a pleasure to have you in our